Hello everyone. Welcome to my second video on critical discourse analysis. In the previous video, I talked about the basic concepts of critical discourse analysis, uh, other concepts like discourse and power, discourse and ideology, Foucauldian concept of discourse analysis, and even I talked about discursive structure. Now, in the remaining section, I will be focusing on different approaches to uh, discourse analysis, different research approaches to discourse analysis. So let me begin my second presentation now. First, we talk about the approaches and methods to CDA research. As I mentioned in the previous video, critical discourse analysis is the socio-political approach to a particular text, a talk, or particular discourse. It assumes that a discourse can never be politically neutral. Discourse may be used as a power tool. Discourse has connection with society. Let's say discourse can be used to practice suppression, domination, and some discourses are used to resist such domination also. And in the discipline of critical discourse analysis, we have to carry out research on how a particular discourse is used to practice domination, suppression, oppression, or how discourse is used to resist such domination. So critical discourse analysis can be an area of, can be a research tool, can be a research method to explore the field, to explore different issues related to language, discourse, power, and so on. So as we are the researchers, critical researchers, we have to know the research approaches, research methods, tools, and so on. So let me say something about research first. Research literally means to search again, to find out something new and more about a phenomenon. Research is a movement from unknown to known. It is a voyage of discovery. Research is conducted mainly for two reasons: to test a particular theory or to build a theory. Research is an addition of new knowledge to the existing body of knowledge. It is an attempt to bridge the knowledge gap. And in the field of critical discourse analysis also, we can carry out research to bridge the knowledge gap, to make the invisible thing visible. What lies beneath text and talk? What lies beneath the language we use, the discourse we produce, discourse we are exposed to? Critical discourse analysis or CDA research is the analysis of text and conversation using linguistics from an avowedly politically committed perspective. In critical discourse analysis, we look at a discourse, we explore a discourse from socio-political point of view. We can see a discourse from Marxist point of view, feminist point of view, or other different types, different perspectives. CDA research has a very wide agenda. It includes the analysis of variety of discourse, strategies, and many other forms of rhetorics. It can be used to analyze both literary and non-literary discourses. Within literature also, various genres, various forms can be analyzed from socio-political point of view. By analyzing such genres, such forms, we exposed how the writer used that discourse to establish certain ideology, to prove or disprove certain ideology, certain thing, and so on. And how CDA, Critical Discourse Analysis, can be a research method. How it can be used as a research method or research tool. CDA research is on how discourse shapes and is shaped by society, institution, and power. In this sense, critical discourse analysis can be a research method. Here, we carry out research on how text and talk, or how a particular discourse shapes society, how it shapes institution and power, and how discourse itself is shaped by society, how our text and talk are shaped by the society, particular institution, or particular power game. We can investigate how language is used to construct and maintain power relations in society with the help of the tools of critical discourse analysis. We can explore the use and abuse of power, use and misuse of power. We can explore the truth and reality hidden in language, embedded in language, embodied by language. But that may not be seen, that may be covert. It is used to see social power struggles. It is used to examine the ideological influences and power relations in a discourse, and different issues like sociopolitical plus cultural factors, gender inequality reflected in discourse, practiced by discourse, media discourse and their implication and their use, political discourses and their implications, different global practices, local practices, the issues of ethnocentrism, the issues of anti-Semitism, the issues of nationalism, the issues of racism. These things can be explored with the help of CDA research. Through CDA research, we can explore how discourse is used, how language is used to practice all these things, how discourse is used to enact, to reproduce, to resist different types of oppressions, dominations, injustice, and so on. And Van Dijk has presented some requirements of CDA research. If you are carrying a CDA research, you have to meet some criteria. The CDA research has to be better than other research in order to be accepted. You have to be very much critical, very much rigorous. Your research has to focus primarily on social issues, social problems, embedded by language, reflected in text and talk, political issues, then on current paradigms and fashion. Critical discourse analysis has to be multidisciplinary. Later on we'll talk about multidisciplinary, the concepts of multidisciplinary, transdisciplinary, and interdisciplinary. It is said that critical discourse analysis should be all. It means it should be multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary, and cross-disciplinary or transdisciplinary. It has to explain discourse structures in terms of the properties of social interaction, both macro and micro aspects of a text and talk should be sincerely analyzed. Critical discourse analysis has to emphasize on the ways discourse structures enact, confirm, legitimate, reproduce, or challenge the relations of power and dominance in society. So overall, the use of the main concern of critical discourse analysis is exploring how discourse is used to exercise power, how it is used to exercise domination, how discourse is used to resist such domination. Uh, such kind of exploration, such kind of study, research can be carried out in very much sincere manner, in very much critical manner. And there are some theoretical aspects of critical discourse analysis. Critical discourse analysis is governed by certain theories. Different theorists have developed such theories. Okay, some pioneering figures have made some contribution. We follow the ideas of Michel Foucault, Link, Fairclough, Dijk, Van Dijk, and other theorists while developing the theoretical framework or while carrying out research on the basis of particular theory. And there are different theoretical aspects of critical discourse analysis, and I want to present here briefly. So what are the major theories of critical discourse analysis? The first one is discourse or dispositive theory. This theory is associated with Foucault, Link, and their team. According to Michel Foucault, discourse analysis is the analysis of discursive elements, non-discursive elements, and materialization. The combination, the collection of discursive properties, non-discursive properties, and materialization. These three components, three properties make a dispositive, and discourse analysis is none other than that dispositive analysis. So here dispositive refers to the collection of discursive, non-discursive, and materialization. It refers to the various institutional, physical, and administrative mechanisms and knowledge structures which enhance and maintain the exercise of power within the social structure, social body. Central to a critical discourse analysis based on this theory has raised some theoretical issues. Actually, in dispositive analysis, we focus on what knowledge consists of, how the valid knowledge evolves, what function it has for the constitution of subjects and the shaping of society, what impact this knowledge has on the overall development of society, what are the discursive elements of a particular dispositive, what are the non-discursive elements, and what are the materializations. So don't forget these three things: discursive, non-discursive, and materialization. So it assumes that people's exposure to different types of discourses determines this knowledge. Discourse analysis aims to identify the knowledge and its critique. Here, discourse is considered to be a flow of stored knowledge. So these are some theoretical tenets of dispositive theory. In one sentence, dispositive theory focuses on dispositive analysis. And it is concerned with knowledge, validity of knowledge, how knowledge is processed, functions of such knowledge for the constitution of subjects, impact of knowledge, analysis of knowledge, and ideology, archive of knowledge, cognitive symbolism, problem of power, discourse on reality. These notions, these issues are analyzed in critical discourse analysis. All these are the ideas related to Michel Foucault and his team. Another theory of critical discourse analysis is activity theory. This theory is concerned with different human activities. It assumes that human activities are socially situated. Discourse is also a human activity. That's why discourse is also socially situated. Every activity consists of subject, object, actions, and operations. People are socioculturally embedded actors. Every discourse is socially situated, and a discourse analyst has to explore the social situatedness of a particular discourse. This is what this theory assumes or says. The theoretical aspect of this theory include meaning, giving reality to meaning, and the mediation between subject and object, society and objective reality by sensory activity. The thrust of this theory is situatedness, social situatedness of discourse, and exploration of this social situatedness in the process of research, in the process of exploration. Next one is general social theory or grand theory. Actually, this theory assumes that discourse is the embodiment of the interaction between social structure and discourse structure. It focuses on the interplay or interaction between social structure and discourse structures. Discourse structures cannot function in a vacuum. They are always in a constant interplay or interaction with the social structures. The theoretical aspect of this theory includes conceptualizing the relations between social structures and discourse structures, micro and macro sociological phenomenon. So here discourse is taken as the embodiment of such phenomena, such interplay between social structure and discourse structure. It is focused more on top-down approach. It means it moves from structure to action. This is called top-down approach. If we move from action to structure, it is bottom-up approach. Here, the concern is the exploration of a particular discourse using these approaches. Here, the concern is social structure, discourse as a social structure. Here, discourse analyzed from the point of view of Marxist society, Marxist ideology, from the point of view of capitalist ideology, and how different types of social practices serve the interest of the dominant class of the society, serve the interest of capitalist class of the society, and how discourse structures are shaped on the basis of those socio-political structures. They are the concerns of this theory, which is called grand theory or general social theory. Here, discourse structures are considered as different forms of speech used in different societies. Middle range theories are also here. Middle range theories are associated with the ideas of Norman Fairclough. The major theoretical aspects are specific social phenomena like conflict, cognition, social networks, and specific subsystems of society like economy, politics, and religion. Fairclough offers 5 theoretical propositions in such theories like discourse and society while carrying out research or while carrying out investigation or exploration. We have to pay attention to discourse and society. Relationship between discourse and society, discourse, knowledge, social relation, and social identity. The notion of power relation and ideologies should be explored. The notion of power struggle that exists in the society should be explored. Similarly, the cooperation between discourse and society. This should also be explored in the process of discourse analysis, let's say critical discourse analysis. Microsociological theories have certain theoretical aspects. They are based on certain theoretical aspects, which are the explanation of social interaction or a reconstruction of everyday procedures which members of a society use to create their own social order and the strategies to reformulate the object. Here, language is not only taken as the primary mode of communication. It is assumed that language and action are mutually constitutive. They constitute each other. They influence each other. Actions are social. Discourse actions are also social. These discourses create identities, and these social actions are always mediated by language, by discourse. So discourse is understood as a means of mediation here in this theory. Discourse is best conceived as either a form of action or a component of action, or discourse is understood as a means of mediation. With the help of language, we come into contact with society, we come into contact with the people of the society, we talk about various issues, various aspects. So Scholon has named this theory as mediated discourse analysis, in short MDA. So it is called MDA because it assumes that language or discourse is the means of mediation. It is mediative tool, not only the means of general communication. So it shifts this analysis shifts the unit of analysis from language to mediated action, the moment social actors act in real time using various discursive and non-discursive mediational means. The main concern of microsociological theory is language, discourse, and the interaction between language and social actions, and how language is used as a means of mediation. Language as a means of mediation. Language as a mediated means, or language through which we come into contact with different aspects of the society. Next one is socio-psychological theory. It is associated with the ideas of Van Dijk. Van Dijk has contributed on social psychology also. According to Van Dijk, discourse is the embodiment of social psychology. The major theoretical aspects of these theories include social reality, social conditions of emotion and cognition. He talks about social cognition, causal explanation to hermeneutic understanding of meaning. He contributed to the development of psychology of text processing. According to Van Dijk, discourse is a form of social practice, and every society has certain cognition, and in discourse that cognition is reflected. Social psychology is reflected in a particular discourse, and while analyzing discourse, context should be understood as an ongoingly updated updated participant construct of the relevant contextual features of text and talk. So contextuality of text and talk, social psychology reflected in text and talk, social cognition reflected in text and talk. These things are focused in socio-psychological theories. So Van Dijk claimed that CDA needs to account for the various forms of social cognitions that are shaped by social collectivities like groups, organizations, institutions, and so on. Social cognitions, according to him, are socially shared representations of societal arrangements, groups, and relations, as well as mental operations such as interpretation, thinking, arguing, inferencing, and learning. The way we interpret, the way we understand, the way we produce a certain discourse is influenced by social cognition or social psychology. In short, this is the idea of Van Dijk. And linguistic theories of critical discourse analysis are associated with the ideas of Norman Fairclough and supported by the works of several other scholars. The major theoretical aspects in linguistic theories are patterns of specific discourse, argumentation and language, system, and verbal communication. Mainly the linguistic properties, linguistic aspects, how different linguistic devices are used to exercise power, to exercise different types of social activities, cultural activities. They are the focus in these theories. Here, lexicogrammatical and semantic aspects of language are taken into consideration. And as you know, Fairclough has developed a three-dimensional framework for critical discourse analysis for studying discourse. He focuses on textual aspect, analysis of spoken or written language text, analysis of how that text is produced, how it is distributed, how it is consumed. This is second level or second dimension, and analysis of discursive events as instances of sociocultural practice, how discourse is used to exercise power. So according to Norman Fairclough, a discourse analysis should be done, should be carried out, a discourse research should be carried out by keeping textual aspects, discursive aspects, and sociocultural aspects in mind. Another theory is related to history, which is called discourse historical theory or discourse historical approach, which is associated with the ideas or the theories of Ruth Udak. According to Ruth Udak, every discourse is a historical product. That's why historical context should be taken into consideration while making a critical discourse analysis. The major theoretical aspects in this theory are historical analysis of action, context, conceptual tools for specific social problems, and focus and on politics. So all discourses are historical. This is the main point we have to remember here. All discourses are contextual. They are historical. That's why while analyzing a particular discourse, we have to know the historical origin, historical context of that discourse origin. Identity politics. Discourse analysis should focus on identity politics on all levels. This theory involves analyzing, understanding, and explaining the relationship between complex historical processes, hegemonic narratives, and different CDA approaches. A particular discourse is analyzed to explore, to expose how different linguistic chunks, linguistic components are used to otherize people, to inferiorize people, to practice different types of chauvinism, ethnic chauvinism, cultural chauvinism, and other types of chauvinism. Ruth Odak carried out research uh, by exploring different discourses produced by European leaders, European politicians, and how those discourses were used to inferiorize the minority people of Europe, especially Jews and others. Okay, so these are the theoretical aspects. Now the next topic is methodological aspects of CDA. If we are carrying out a research using the tools of CDA, what methods should be followed? We'll talk now onwards. Methodological aspects of CDA. So here methodology refers to philosophical guidelines for carrying out research. Research is an exploration. It is a movement from known to unknown, or let's say unknown to known. And for this research journey, we need some research guidelines, philosophical guidelines. And these philosophical guidelines are called methodologies. So methodology provides guidelines for the research. The methodological aspects of CDA are different in terms of theoretical aspects. Earlier we talked about different theoretical aspects, and the methodological journey will be different according to those theoretical aspects. And still we can divide, we can categorize the methodological aspects of CDA into two types. Jager has presented two sets of methodological aspects in his article. The first one is methodological aspects in general practice. In general practice, while carrying out research, what methods, what methodological aspects are followed and how they are used in critical discourse analysis, and what are the specific methodological aspects in discourse. Methodological aspects in discourse and dispositive analysis. The second one is more concerned, more related to the methodological tools specified by Michel Foucault. Now, the first one is methodological aspects in general practice. So, while carrying out research in critical discourse analysis, we have to follow some methodological steps in general. The first step is selection of the object to be investigated. What text, what discourse we are going to explore, we are going to investigate. We have to specify first. The second step is justification of the method and exploration of that methodological steps. In the second step, we have to justify why a particular method, particular research tool will be appropriate for exploring that particular text, the text we have selected. Then we have to analyze the structure, research structure, research framework. On the basis of what research framework we want to carry out research, we want to analyze that particular discourse, we have to specify. We have to make, after that we have to make the fine analysis of one or several articles which are as typical as possible on that particular sector. And then we have to make overall analysis of that sector concerned. We may have to analyze both form and content of the text. We may have to analyze both local aspect of the text as well as global aspect of the text, or let's say micro elements of the text as well as macro elements of the text. We have already talked about micro and macro elements of the text. Micro elements are more linguistic elements, linguistic properties. Macro elements are non-linguistic properties, different socio-political variables. So while making analysis or critical discourse analysis in general, we have to keep these methodological aspects in mind. And the critical discourse analysis is different from other types of research. Meyer 2001 has presented some reasons why CDA is different from other types of research. It is different from other types of research in terms of nature of the problem. Our main concern in critical discourse analysis is exposing how a particular discourse embodies the notion of power and politics, embodies the notion of practice of domination, suppression, oppression, and resistance. So language and those issues both are analyzed. Language and discourse both are analyzed here. So in this sense, the nature of the problem is different. The notion of intertextuality and interdiscursivity. In this sense also, critical discourse analysis differs from other types of resources, other research methods. Here we focus on intertextuality, or the interconnection between different types of text, and interdiscursivity, how the text is formed. What is the interconnection in the text formation process, discourse formation process. That is the issue here. In this sense, it is different from other. The notion of context. Every discourse is context dependent. The historical origin, contextual origin of the discourse should be taken into consideration. So in this sense, it is different from other. Specific incorporation of linguistic categories into its analysis. Different linguistic categories, different micro elements of the text are collected, analyzed, they are interpreted. Here we focus on this. Linguistic properties are focused here. This is, in this sense, it is different from other. Similarly, while analyzing the text, we follow the hermeneutic process of interpretation. We assume that the critical discourse analysis, or any type of let's say textual analysis, discourse analysis, is just the interpretation, and interpretation is always subjective. No interpretation can give the final meaning, very objective meaning of the text. This critical discourse analysis is governed by post-positivist notion, interpretivist notion. It assumes that a researcher cannot find the single meaning, single truth. Truth is multiple, interpretation is multiple, and no interpretation can be totally objective. So in this sense, this research is a specific type of research. It is different from other types of research methods, and it is also interdisciplinary type of research. It borrows the ideas from various other disciplines and uses those ideas for its own convenience. And now, methodological aspects in discourse and dispositive analysis. As I mentioned earlier, the methodological aspects in discourse and dispositive analysis are more concerned with the ideas of Michel Foucault. Michel Foucault says that discourse analysis is not only the analysis of linguistic properties, it is not only the analysis of discursive elements, it is the analysis of both discursive and non-discursive elements, both linguistic and non-linguistic elements, both verbal and non-verbal elements. This is said here. This analysis, such analysis of discourse as well as non-discursive practices, is called dispositive analysis. So the analysis of both discursive properties, non-discursive properties, as well as the materialization, these things is what we call dispositive analysis. Why all these things should be analyzed? Because there is interaction of discursive behavior, non-discursive behavior, and materialization, manifestation also. Let me read one sentence here. The interaction of discursive behavior, which is speech, and third, based upon a shared knowledge pool. Non-discursive behavior, which refers to the acts based on knowledge, and manifestation of knowledge by means of acts or behaviors. All these things form dispositive. Discourse analysis is dispositive analysis. I think this figure will make you clear. According to Michel Foucault, discourses are part of dispositive, and dispositive consists of three components. They are discursive practices, non-discursive practices, and materialization. So discourses are part of dispositive, which includes discursive practices, which can be said and written. Non-discursive practices refer to actions based on speech, and materializations refer to the objects related to discourse. And a critical discourse analyst has to analyze these three things: dispositive elements, discursive elements, non-discursive elements, and materialization. Foucault has given the following steps in dispositive analysis. Discourse analyst, a critical discourse analyst, has to reconstruct the knowledge in discursive practices. Discursive practice is related to speech and writing. Non-discursive practices, these are related to actions. And materializations, real objects related to discourse. So these things, these things should be taken into consideration. This is the toolbox developed by Michel Foucault. And getting the ideas from Foucault, Jager 2001 suggests some operational procedures in discourse analysis. While analyzing discourse, a discourse analyst has to analyze different components, different operationalizational aids. They are discourse strands. The second one is discourse fragment. The third one is entanglement of discourse strands. The fourth one is discursive events or discursive context. The fifth one is discourse planes. Next one is discourse position. The number is wrong here. Similarly, he or she has to explain the history, present, and future of discourse strand. And the last one is the completeness of discourse analysis. So what are discourse strands? Simply, discourse strands are thematically uniform discourse processes in which each discourse strand has a synchronic and diachronic dimension. Each discourse contains multitude of discourse fragments. So in simple language, you can say discourse strands are thematically uniform discourse processes. Discourse fragments are the parts of discourse strands. They are the text or part of text which deal with certain theme. So each discourse strand may contain different discourse fragments. Next component is entanglement of discourse strands. It refers to a series of discourse fragments. There may be the togetherness of different discourse fragments that may include various themes. Different fragments may be associated with different themes, and the series of those fragments associated with different themes can be called entanglement of discourse strand. A discourse analyst has to explore these entanglements also. Once again, a discourse analyst has to explore thematically uniform discourse processes. He or she has to explore the parts, pieces of the thematically uniform discourse process, which may have certain theme. He or she has to explore the series of discourse fragments containing various themes. Similarly, he or she has to explore discursive events which are specifically emphasized politically, politically significant. The events, discourse events, should be identified and that should be explored. Similarly, the societal location of particular discourse should also be explored, which is called discourse planes. Discourse position, which is the ideological position of a person or medium which needs to be revealed. It should also be analyzed or explored. The past, present, and future of discourse strand should be considered. Similarly, the completeness of discourse analysis, that means how reliable the analysis is, how valid the analysis is, whether the analysis is complete or not, how representative the discourse analysis is. Okay, these things should be taken into consideration. These things should be analyzed in the process of discourse analysis, and this is overall dispositive analysis in the language of Michel Foucault. Now the next topic is methods of CDA, or the steps of critical discourse analysis. I think these steps are not so unfamiliar, so I'll not be explaining these things. I'll be just reading those steps. The very first methodological step of CDA research is to theorize the subject of investigation with any one theory of CDA. We have discussed several theories of CDA, and we have to explore a particular discourse through the theoretical lens of that particular theory. This is the first methodological step. The second step is to operationalize the theory into practice. We have to use the theory to analyze that particular discourse. The third step is setting the objectives being grounded on particular theory used in the research. So what are the objectives of research? We have to set up. The fourth step is to prepare research questions. Your research is the process of finding answers to your research questions. So you have to set up your research questions. Next step is the collection of data. We may collect data from the discourses. Another step is operationalization analysis, the data analysis process. Then we come to certain findings, and after that we assess the quality of our findings. These are the simple steps of CDA research. And different theorists have put forward their views on the methodology of CDA, critical discourse analysis. Here I have included the views of Jager, 2011, Van Dijk, similarly Ruth Odak, Ron Skolon, Norman Fairclough, and so on. So all these theorists focus on discourse and its connection with different social issues, socio-cultural issues. They focus on both micro and macro analysis of discourse. If you are carrying out discourse analysis critically, you have to analyze micro aspects, textual components, as well as macro aspects, non-textual components, the different issues of power, domination, suppression, ideology, and so on. Now, another topic is approaches to critical discourse analysis. Here are different approaches to critical discourse analysis. I'm not going to give the detail of this, just I'll present the concept only. Altogether, we have 9 approaches to critical discourse analysis. Historical approach, multidisciplinary approach, transdisciplinary approach, feminist approach, colonial and post-colonial approach, dialectical approach, Marxist approach, interdisciplinary approach, and multimodal approach. So briefly, I'll be defining these approaches. The first one is historical approach. The historical approach to critical discourse analysis was proposed by Ruth Odak. According to Odak, every discourse is historical product. That's why while analyzing a particular discourse, we have to analyze the contemporary time also, in what context particular discourse was produced, and how the context of the time influenced the production of discourse, distribution of that discourse, and consumption of discourse. So this approach aims to integrate systematically all available background information in the analysis and interpretation of the many layers of written or spoken text. So mainly this approach duly considers historical context in the process of having critical analysis of particular discourse. So this approach believes that language manifests and constitutes social processes, interaction. It focuses on historical context of discourse in the process of explanation and interpretation. Next one is multidisciplinary approach. It is associated with the ideas of Dijk again. He developed this idea from his research in media text. This approach focuses on analyzing a particular discourse from multiple perspectives. A single discourse can be analyzed, can be interpreted critically from multiple points of view by keeping different facets of discourse in mind. One triangular picture, let me show. This approach assumes that a discourse has social aspect, cognitive aspect, and textual aspect. So you have to analyze social aspects of discourse, cognitive aspects of discourse, social cognition, social psychology, and textuality of discourse in the process of critical discourse analysis. So by keeping society, cognition, and text in mind, you have to explore how a particular text manifests or embodies socio-political reality, socio-political aspect. This is the second one. Transdisciplinary approach is associated with the ideas of Norman Fairclough. Norman Fairclough's ideas are associated with different theories here, don't be confused. This theory or this approach assumes that discourses have discursive effects, discourses have rhetorical effects, discourses have non-discursive effects. That's why just analyzing a text, analyzing a talk, analyzing a discourse on the basis of particular discipline only may not be enough. So you may have to go beyond disciplines. You may have to go beyond the disciplinary concept, and to solve your purpose, what tools, what methods are necessary, you are free to use them. So in this sense, you can say it is post-disciplinary approach. It is a blend of interdisciplinary approach and post-disciplinary approach. It is grounded on the study of sociology of capitalism. And Norman Fairclough also says that a discourse analysis, a critical discourse analysis, should explore the issues of issues of politics, power, domination, suppression, justice, these things. And for the sake of exposing those things, those realities, a discourse analyst has to go beyond the disciplinary concept. It means he or she has to follow transdisciplinary tools. He or she has to use transdisciplinary tools okay, for this purpose. Next one is dialectical relational approach. This approach is also associated with the ideas of Norman Fairclough. As I mentioned earlier, also, according to Norman Fairclough, discourse structures and social structures have dialectical relationship. They influence each other. They affect each other. That's why a discourse analyst has to explore, has to investigate the interconnection between social structure and discourse structure. This is what Norman Fairclough says. The work of Norman Fairclough presents a comprehensive and programmatic attempts to develop a theory of CDA which links discourse, power, and social structure. The dialectical relationship between discourse, power, and social structure. He examines the role of social institutions in shaping the discourse. How social institutions, social practices govern the discourse, shape the discourse. That should be taken into consideration. And Fairclough has developed three-dimensional models of discourse analysis. The first one is a textual model, text or linguistic. This is linguistic analysis. A discourse analyst has to analyze the micro aspects of the text. Next one is discursive analysis of discursive practice. Is the analysis of how the text was produced, how it was distributed, and how it was consumed. So production, distribution, and consumption of text, and how the text embodies power relations, ideologies, hegemony, and so on. So these things are taken into consideration. This is the three-dimensional model of discourse analysis: the textual analysis, the discursive analysis, and social analysis. Another model is interdisciplinary model of discourse analysis. Another one is interdisciplinary approach. As the title implies, it blends the ideas from various disciplines for the exploration. It combines interdisciplinary approach combines institutional theory with cognitive science and discourse analysis. So in this sense, it is interdisciplinary. It combines institutional theory with cognitive science and discourse analysis. It combines with several other fields which are somehow related to such institutional theory. So ideas from various other disciplines are combined together, and they are used to explore the issues of language and discourse, language and power, and so on. And this interdisciplinary approach was developed by Dijk and Meyer and discussed by Bones and Carson, 2001. It's the study of different types of discourse and rhetorics. This approach is compatible with institutional paradigm and its corresponding organizational arrangement. It talks about the condition of normality, abnormality, crisis, and change in institutionalized discourse. It blends the ideas from various disciplines and uses them for the critical analysis of particular selected discourse. Similarly, we have another discourse, that is a multimodal discourse analysis approach. Multimodal discourse analysis. So let me give some more time for this as it is different from other types of discourse analysis. Actually, multimodal discourse analysis is the analysis of how a particular discourse is composed using multimodals of textual composition. In this analysis, the researcher considers how text draws on various modes of communication, such as pictures, film, video, images, and other semiotic devices, other verbal and non-verbal devices, verbal and non-verbal components for certain effect, for certain impression. So in this discourse analysis, we see different types of textual and non-textual components, verbal and non-verbal components used by a discourse writer or discourse maker for achieving certain goal. So we can analyze particular painting or particular scene of movie or particular let's say picture, pages of the book, magazines, let's say websites, and so on. So it has examined, using this model we can examine different print genres as well as web pages, movies, television programs, and so on. So how multimodals are used for the discourse composition, and what is the implied meaning of different types of modals, different types of textual, non-textual elements used in a particular discourse. That is the focus of multimodal discourse analysis. Here gestures, images, music, these things are also, these semiotic elements are analyzed. I'll not say much about feminist discourse analysis. If you look at a discourse wearing the feminist glasses, exploring the issues of gender, patriarchy, its domination, practice of male chauvinism, how a particular discourse embodies male chauvinism, gender hegemony, inequality, suppression, oppression. If these things are explored in your discourse analysis, in your research, it is feminist discourse analysis. Marxist discourse analysis, it is familiar one, so I'll not be talking much about this. If you analyze a discourse using Marxist tools, I mean exploring the issues of class, suppression, oppression, domination, how discourse is used, how in a particular discourse, the have-nots are presented as backward, uncivilized, barbaric, or lazy people. These things, okay, how the poor people are depicted, how the rich people are depicted, how capitalists are depicted, how the working class people are depicted. Okay, whether the writer supports capitalist agenda or anti-capitalist agenda, or the writer has ambivalent position. That is the concern in Marxist analysis. In colonial and post-colonial discourse analysis, we analyze a particular discourse by keeping colonial and post-colonial issues in our mind. How a particular discourse presents the colonized people or colonizing people, colonizers and colonized. And most of the discourses produced by the Western writers present the colonized people very negatively and colonizers very positively. They are mostly imperialist type of discourse, or they are orientalist type of discourse. The Eastern people are presented negatively. So the practice of otherization, chauvinism, the practice of privileging or marginalization, these things are explored, are investigated in critical discourse analysis. Colonial and post-colonial issues are explored in such type of research. on the basis of colonial, post-colonial approach. Major points are given here. By reading these points, you can easily understand. So I don't want to explain much. And now last topic of this presentation is application of CDA. Actually, in this section, we'll be discussing how to analyze a particular discourse from critical point of view, or certain discourse is given and we have to go through that discourse and analyze it. So what things should be taken into consideration while making critical discourse analysis of the selected text? In your final exam, you may be given a passage or a text, or text may be given. You have to go through it and analyze the micro elements and macro elements of the text very critically. You have to expose the issues of politics and power, as we discussed earlier, as we discussed in the previous chapters. So whatever you understood from chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, you have to apply all those things here. Macro analysis and micro analysis. And I have attached some tips here, some keys to remember while doing CDA. You have to read and reread the given text. You have to highlight the major issues and concerns. You have to conceptualize the meaning of the issue. What issue is found in that particular text, you have to conceptualize. You have to reconstruct the text as your own. You have to write the analysis as your own. You have to prepare the draft and final copy. Or write a short introduction of a discourse of that particular selected text. Mention the brief introduction. Introduce the text highlighting the main issue. Select the representative vocabulary and sentences. Present the ideological position of the writer. Relate the message of the text with any approach, Marxist, feminist, or any other approach. You can use any approach you discussed in your course, and you have to analyze the issue very critically. So simply go through the text, first understand the text clearly, then write a short critical introduction to that text, then analyze micro elements of the text. In micro elements, you have to analyze words, sentence choice, phrases, different cohesive devices used in the text, coherent devices used in the text. Similarly, if conversation is given, different elements of conversation, discourse elements of conversation that you discuss in chapter 1, you have to find out there. You have to write what kind of elements are used there: adjacency, pair, move, sequence, transaction, transitivity, these things. In written text, if the text is written, then mainly you focus on coherence, cohesion, different types of discourse markers of written text. You have to find out, and you have to write the meaning, whatness of the text, whyness of the text, howness of the text. And while making macro analysis, you have to find out the global aspects of the text, text and power, text and ideology, text and domination, text and suppression, operation. Okay, so what ideology is reflected in the text, okay, and how the writer has attempted to justify that particular ideology. So take out the examples from the text and write your analytical report. So Van Dijk has given some tips on how to critically analyze a text, transitivity, mood and modality, what mood is there, what sort of modal verbs are used there, what sort of vocabulary is used, what are the interactional or control features used in the text, what topic is focused, what is the presupposition of the writer, okay, what vagueness is there, what is the implicational features used in the text, cooperative principles used in that conversation, Okay, what element is backgrounded, what element is foregrounded, what element is middle grounded. Okay, so these things, uh, okay, what sort of voice is used in the text, activation, passivization, what sort of adverbs, adjectives are used in the text, what is their significance, what is their meaning. Okay, what sort of vocabulary is used in the text, what is their meaning, and how those textual elements uh, okay, serve the interest of the writer, interest of that discourse producer. So select a specific text that you would like to analyze. Look for the words and phrases that reveal the text attitudes to the to its subject. Consider the consider how the text includes or excludes the readers from a particular community. Look for the assumed interpretation that text has already made. Analyze the text form and content, text form and production. Think about the way your text has been produced. Examine the form of the text and consider who has access to it. Analyze quotations and borrowed language used in the text. It means you have to analyze uh, micro elements and macro elements, macro aspects of the text. And for facilitating you, uh, I have attached one sample analysis also, sample analysis of a paragraph. I think this question was asked in your final exam. So please, while watching this video, pause the video for a moment, read the text and how I have analyzed this text. You see this, okay, introduction to the text, then uh, about the given text, introduction or background information. So I have briefly mentioned what discourse analysis is, then about the text, what the text is about, then micro analysis of the text. You can add your own analysis, your own ideas here. Then macro analysis of the text, text and power, text and different social issues, and concluding remarks. So this is just an example. This is not the final one. This is not the best one also. Okay, you can write better than this. If you are carrying out research thesis itself, you have to analyze in different chapters. But for the exam purpose, just in few pages, 2-3 pages, you have to complete your critical discourse analysis. Okay, so dear viewers, my students who may be watching this video later on. So I tried my best to summarize the whole course actually in these 2 videos. So I have only included the key concepts here of different chapters of these 4 chapters. I have skipped many topics there. These videos are only the means, they are not the end. These are only the supporting materials. So for your broader knowledge, in-depth knowledge, you have to go through the prescribed textbooks and other materials. You can watch other videos given on YouTube, and you can prepare on the basis of long lengthy classroom discussions we made in our face-to-face uh, face-to-face communication, face-to-face class. And this time, just for your convenience, just for facilitating you, for just to enable you to understand the subject matters very clearly, I prepared these videos. There are many lapses, shortcomings in these videos. Many topics, many concept jargons are very difficult to understand and explain also, but I have tried my best to make them clear. Uh, Once again, I would like to thank you everyone for your patience. See you next time. Thank you very much.